How did the Mongol Empire grow so fast across all of Eurasia? And what were the most important forces that made it happen? Thank you for your attention to this question. So I did an episode on the Mongol Empire. Maybe it was episode 2 or 3 or something of the Ask Abhijit show. Today is episode 278. So maybe we can revisit some questions about the Mongol Empire. It's been a long time since I spoke about this matter, and I'm sure a lot of subscribers have not seen me speak about this and may have these questions. So we can certainly revisit this. How did the Mongol Empire grow so fast across all of Eurasia? What made it happen? The most important forces. So if you look at the region of Mongolia in the 1200s, 1300s, what was the population? Maybe a million or 2 million. Okay, maybe a couple of million. Let's quickly um, do a quick Google search. What is the population of Manipur today? Okay, 1 second. Here, population of Manipur. Manipur today, 3.75 million. So Manipur is this tiny state in the far east of India, right? 3.75 million is the population today. The population of Mongolia was less than that, maybe 2 3 million. Okay. And out of that little population came the greatest empire in human history until that time. So the people of Mongolia were used to hardship. The weather in Mongolia is essentially the same as the weather in Ladakh today, in northern India, minus the altitude. The climate in Ladakh is even harsher than Mongolia because of the extreme altitudes. But otherwise, the climate in Mongolia is essentially the same as Ladakh if you subtract the effects of altitude. Extreme cold and so on, and lack of water, etc. That sort of thing. So the people of Mongolia were used to extreme hardship for centuries, for millennia, and they lived in small nomadic groups. So they were accustomed to a very disciplined, very regimented lifestyle. The moment you broke discipline, you died. That's how bad it was. So they were used to very tough conditions. And they had these little clans or tribes, the Borjigin, the Olkhunut, the Uryankhai, and the the Naimans, and various other tribes. And all the tribes would fight each other because of the scarce resources. So they would try and live as far as apart as possible, but if they came into contact, they would essentially fight. And the Chinese were the biggest instigators who kept the tribes fighting each other. The Chinese. So you had these people who were accustomed to extreme hardship. They were accustomed to living in almost a militaristic fashion, but they were fighting each other. So somebody had to come and unite them, and that somebody was Shri Chinggis Khan. So for the first 43, 44, maybe 45 years of his life, he spent fighting the various Mongol tribes and unifying them. When he unified them, he said, "All right, it's time to go. First, let's teach the Chinese a lesson. They've been bleeding us for centuries." So that's where it starts. So the Mongols were already accustomed to a militaristic lifestyle, a regimented lifestyle. Genghis Khan weaponized that, and he enlisted the entire corpus of the Mongolian population into the military. Everybody, every able-bodied man or boy became a warrior. Older people became shepherds and tenders of livestock because their entire food was based on sheep, mutton. So that's what happened. And Genghis Khan, well, he was a genius. So he was able to organize the Mongol army in such a way that nobody had done before. And at the pinnacle of Genghis Khan's powers, at the pinnacle of his career, the Mongol army was at most 100,000 strong, 1 lakh. You could fit the entire Mongol army into the Eden Garden Stadium or the Narendra Modi Stadium. And with that army, he conquered half the known world. So he conquered it through incredibly brilliant tactics and strategies. He also had incredibly brilliant generals like Subotai Bahadur, right? Um, the Mongols pioneered so much. They pioneered what we now call the blitzkrieg. They Genghis Khan understood that on a battlefield, it's all the flow of energy that matters. He could see he could visualize the battlefield as if he was like a kilometer above the battlefield. He could see how things were going. He understood the role that energy and momentum played in battles, and he innovated various battle strategies and tactics, the two horns maneuver, and so much more. And the entire purpose of existence of the Mongol uh, population was war. That's how it went. But Genghis Khan, at least while he was alive, he only fought just wars. He did not start wars because it just felt like it, and that's a whole different story. So, because of this combination of factors, it grew incredibly fast, and they had tremendous communications. They had a postal service. They had communications that were like unimaginably fast for the 13th century, for the 14th century, for the 13th century. Nobody communicated at that speed. And the speed at which the armies moved on the battlefield was unimaginable. And a lot of this was thanks to the Mongolian pony. It's a horse that's like shorter than the Arabian horses or whatever else. It's very similar to the Manipuri pony, by the way. And yeah, so it's the Mongolian pony. This little horse that was the battle tank of the Mongolian armed forces. So it was a combination of all these factors that made this happen. Good question. Good question. All right. Now, next question. Magnificent Shri Nehruji says, how did the Mongol Empire maintain trade and communication across such a massive land area? So, at its pinnacle during Shri Genghis Khan's time, half the known world was conquered by the Mongol Empire, excluding India. Yeah. And yeah, we know the answer to the question. Now, how did they maintain trade and communication? Because if you want to maintain a cohesive empire that doesn't disintegrate spontaneously, you need communications. You need to know exactly what's happening in various parts of the empire. And sometimes, when you're talking about an empire like the Mongol Empire, we're talking about thousands of kilometers. So, how do you know what's happening 2,000 kilometers away, for example? You've got to know, otherwise, you lose all control. Not only do you need to know what's happening, you need to be able to control what's happening. So you need constant communication. So the Mongols had the world's best postal service, courier service, and a system uh, of communicators based on horses. So they would have these checkposts at at distances of, let's say, roughly 50 to 100 kilometers, and you would have fresh horses everywhere. So a guy who's, let's say, going from Karakoram to maybe the borderlands of present day Ukraine, bearing a message from Sri Genghis Khan to his vassal there, or to his general there. So if Genghis Khan sends a message, he will give it to a rider who will ride at the speed of sound, essentially, as fast as possible. And the moment he reaches the next checkpoint, he will surrender his horse there and take a fresh horse and go and go and go. And that way they could cover incredible distances in very short periods of time. So that's how they were able to maintain communication. And trade is a more leisurely thing. And they had a proper system of trade. Uh, they had free trade. So you could trade without tax and all that, as long as you were part of the Mongol Empire. So all of this is thanks to the system that Genghis Khan created. A very, very disciplined, well organized, well oiled system. And that's how he was able to maintain such a big empire. But eventually the empire became it outgrew him. It outgrew the capabilities of any communication system of that time. So eventually, the empire grew even further, even larger, and his sons took over. Then they had to take various chunks of the empire, and eventually it fragmented because of various reasons, such as infighting and so on, and also because the empire became so large that even with the best communication system in the world, it was no longer possible to communicate in real time, or at least in decent enough time.